Coming to you from Studio A here at Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. It's time for the Gardening Simplified podcast, radio, and YouTube show with Stacy Hervella, me, Rick Weist, and our engineer and producer, Adriana Robinson. Well, Stacy, I'm wearing my Mr. Rogers sweater, a wonderful gift I received from you and Adriana, and I think, it's time to talk garden gifts, a fun thing to talk about. And wow, I'm looking at, for our YouTube viewers, this beautiful gift on the table.
Yes, this is an Adriana Robinson original, and
Wow.
She presented it to me a few weeks ago, and it is a stained glass version of the show logo with the microphone and all of the flowers and leaves and things sprouting out of it. Isn't it great?
She is so talented.
She
I
is.
love that.
I hate to break it to you listeners, but she is not available for personalized gifts. She is too full already this season, so...
Well, I'll tell you what, personalized gifts are wonderful, and also for, let's call them boomer gardeners like me, we have to learn to embrace new technology. And, I had somebody this past week say to me that folks who are in the Gen Z generation, they are digital natives. They don't know anything different than smartphones, computers, AI, and all that type of thing. And so it's natural to them. But for us, as gardeners, for example, cordless electric pruning shears. A pruning shears that's cordless and electric. Are you kidding me? Or cordless electric mini chainsaws or electric sprayers as opposed to those pressure tank sprayers that can be a real pain.
Yeah, those are fun.
All of that kind of stuff is available to folks today. I mean, you think about LED lights and LED technology, outdoor lighting in your garden. Fabulous.
Yeah, such great choices, and you can get solar powered, so you don't need to make it a complicated thing. I'm glad you brought up the electric or cordless items, because we just got a electric blower. So I'm not a big fan of blowers. We've talked about blowers plenty on the show. But, I have a number of succulents in the garden, right? Mm-hmm. So I have a couple of different succulent gardens. And if there's one thing that doesn't mix with succulents, it's leaves. It's very easy for them to get smothered with foliage. And so my husband wanted to do something about it. And he got a battery-operated blower that works on his drill battery.
Yes.
And it's super light. It's not loud and obnoxious. It doesn't have like a combustion engine because it's electric. And it is fantastic. It's
great.
easy to carry. It works with the batteries we already had, because the battery is the biggest part of that. That would be a great gift for someone. I have to tell you right now, the best gifts, Rick, I think, are the ones that people don't know they want.
Love that. Love that. Why don't we just go to segment 2? Because you just nailed it.
Figure out the rest yourself. We've got nothing.
Well, have I got a surprise for you then? But you're right. The electrical and the power that they have. You see people using these rechargeable lawnmowers.
Yeah,
now.
I've got that too.
Amazing.
We have a
thing.
battery-operated lawnmower that is fantastic. I love it because you're not looking like an idiot out there trying to pull your cord and the darn thing's not starting.
Exactly.
And it's so quiet that it doesn't bother your neighbors. You can actually hold a conversation while you're using an electric mower, and it doesn't stink. No bad fumes. And it really makes mowing the lawn a pleasure. I love it.
To make a long story short, it's a great way to go. Outdoor speakers that are solar charged. You can play music outside. Cork-lined Italian clogs for hard-working feet. Yeah, I love that. I've gotten into, again, I'm at that, Medicare retiree age, the Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg slip-on Skechers shoes.
Oh.
And they're great. Never thought I'd wear them, but I'm wearing them. Harvest baskets. How many times have you gone into the vegetable garden and you've got armloads of peppers and beans and tomatoes and you drop half of them on the way back into the house?
Yes, that is true. I have many harvest baskets that never seem to be in the garden when I need them, and therefore I do that despite the presence of harvest baskets. But it is a great gift because they are beautiful. I have one that kind of has like a wire mesh, so you can just rinse stuff off right outside in the garden. And I have some other nicer ones that are suitable for a kitchen display. And that's a great gift too. If you really don't know like what someone wants, sometimes I think some garden gifts are maybe just a little too personal. Like, if you want to get a gardener some gloves, I would caution against it. Like, unless you know what kind of glove they like, and you are looking to get them like a year's supply of them or something, it's a very personal preference.
It's true.
But something like that, like a beautiful basket, that's a great thing that they can use and, enjoy and think of you every time they do use it.
Sunglasses and hats would probably fall into that category also, yeah. For me, based on the recommendations of our viewers and listeners, I'm going to get a Hose Link 82-foot retractable hose. They're $250. I'm going to gift myself.
I think you've earned it. And, anything, that's one of those things that, everyone who has one of those raves about it. And, if you're like us and you really just despise the hose struggle, it's worth it. The sanity that you will regain will pay for itself like in the first day you use it, really.
You betcha. And of course, you guys know I'm a runner, and so I use a lot of these moisture wicking shirts that runners use. They're cool. They fight off UV rays. They stretch. They have antimicrobial odor fighting technology. Why not use them in the garden? And the same is for tactical pants that have pockets, are lightweight, that stretch. I'm big into that in the garden. I want to mention that coming up in the fourth segment, we get to talk to Dr. Alan Armitage, who has written many books, and I still think books are a great gift. And I'm not being old-fashioned here. Books are easy to wrap or ship. They entertain people. They are the ultimate re-giftable gift. Books increase intelligence. They last forever. Books meet everyone's needs. Books offer variety to gift giving. They're inexpensive. I can go on and on. You can personalize a book.
Yes, I will always welcome a book. And so I would have 2 book suggestions for our listeners. So you've heard me say this on the show before. If you are interested in getting someone a gardening book, like a practical gardening book, the best recommendation I can offer you is The Well-Tended Perennial Garden by Tracy DeSabato Oust. It is an absolutely incredible volume of work. I've talked about how she basically sacrificed her own garden for years, experimenting with different perennial pruning techniques to either delay bloom or get stronger stems, all of these other things. And the great thing about that book in particular is it's not information you're going to find online. So many other books, sure, it's nice to have on your shelf, but ultimately it's just kind of duplicating stuff that you can find online.
Sure.
Tracy's book is not information you're going to find anywhere else, and perennial gardeners especially are going to love reading it. So that's a specific recommendation. If you don't know what kind of book to get someone, I love any kind of garden inspiration book. Like if it's a colorful, coffee table level picture book, whether it's of a specific garden, say a famous garden in the UK or something like that, or a bunch of different gardens, you can't go wrong because, especially in winter at Christmas time, people are dying for some inspiration. They're ready for the spring again. And it's a great way to just inspire them and give them something really beautiful to look at.
Great suggestions. In today's digital age, a coffee table book still works.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a few other suggestions at you, but Stacy, I'm going to have you open this up on air.
Oh my gosh.
Just tear that package there for the folks watching on YouTube.
We got some sound effects here of the
This is a personalized, nostalgic gift for Stacy.
Oh my gosh. Look at this.
I worked hard at it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It is, for our listeners who cannot see what I'm opening right now, it is a macrame lawn chair. The kind that Rick hates and is always make sure he's first to the buffet line so he doesn't come back and get stuck with the macrame lawn chair, as he said in our nostalgia show. This is gorgeous.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I did not make the chair. I am not talented like you, Stacy. I bought it on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, this is great.
So it's slightly used, too.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic.
But, giving gifts with meaning is important, even if you're giving gifts to gardeners. And so, I think seed kits are great. You can buy garden gloves now. I know you mentioned the garden gloves, but you can buy garden gloves now that have claws.
Oh, I like those. Actually, that is a gift I would welcome.
Yeah.
Because I do too much digging, and then I wear out just like a couple fingers on the gloves. It's very annoying.
And, of course, a gift card to your favorite garden center or greenhouse, also a great idea. So there are many different things that you can give as gifts and, put a little thought, a little meaning into it too. And That chair, I might even sit in that.
You'll have to give it a try and see if you've changed your tune since back in the day when you really developed your dislike of the macrame lawn chair. So,
well, don't forget the gardener on your gift list. Let's see how Stacy ties this in with Plants on Trial. That's coming up next here on the Gardening Simplified Show.
Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified Show, where the order of the day is gifts. And Rick just gifted me a wonderful vintage macrame lawn chair. If you missed our nostalgia show, you should definitely go back and check that out. We talked about a lot of things from our past, and Rick expressed his disapproval for the classic macrame lawn chair. Are you changing your tune now?
I am changing my tune. You've converted me.
All right, good. I'm glad to hear it. And I think that gardeners, anytime someone in your life has a passion like gardening, it becomes a lot easier to shop for them. There's a lot of people in your life that are hard to shop for because either they buy everything that they want, or they don't really have like a thing that they love to do, and it becomes very difficult to shop for them. So by having a gardener in your life, you're already halfway there because you know that they love something, and there's a lot of different things that you can get them. And plants, I think, are always a natural choice for gifts. Now, of course, December here in the Northern Hemisphere, and certainly here in the Midwest and Northeast and much of the United States, plants are not the best gift to give at the holidays because it's winter and things are dormant.
Yeah, and it's a great point, Stacy. Coming up next week, we'll talk about citrus plants, and that's a plant that could be given as a gift too.
Definitely. And of course, a poinsettia is a classic hostess gift if you're invited to someone's house. But I think a lot of people throughout the year actually really want to give plants as gifts for a variety of reasons. I mean, of course, plants are very, very popular as something to commemorate a birth, a wedding, or to give to someone who has lost someone that they've loved as a kind of living memorial to them.
You bet.
And I think that those can be just such a good reason to give a gift. So knowing that, December is not the best time for giving most plants as gifts, except for houseplants, which I've definitely given houseplants to people for gifts before, and that's always a nice thing. I wanted to talk just sort of generally about what makes a plant suitable for giving at any time of the year, because it's kind of a tricky thing. I mean, very often we're giving these to people that we know fairly well, but at the same time, we don't necessarily know how much space they have. We don't necessarily know, how much sun they have or what the sun is like in the spot where they actually will eventually plant this thing. And you want to give them something that is beautiful and memorable and special, but also not a ton of work.
And you want it to work.
Yes.
You want it to work because they're going to feel a degree of pressure to, I got to take care of this plant.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, that definitely becomes true if it is something that is tied to a life event. So, you don't want to get something that's like too boring and work a day and it's like, oh, this is just something they would buy themselves. You kind of want it. You want to be that like gifting superhero where you found the perfect plant and it's something that they can really appreciate and enjoy. So I thought a lot about, what is the right kind of plant? And here's some characteristics I think it should have. Number one, it should be fairly small because trees, of course, are a classic choice, but a tree is a big commitment, usually not just in terms of its lifespan, but also, it can be a lot more expensive. I mean, trees have come down since they're mostly container grown. But still, they're going to cost a bit more, and it's just a much bigger commitment. So you want something usually that's going to be a little bit smaller, that it's easy for the person, the recipient, to fit into their yard and into their life. And you want it to have at least one spectacular moment. I think that that's really important too. Is you don't want it to just be like, oh yeah, they gave me this, taxus, and it's like.
Right.
Okay, it looks the same all year. Never really has that special moment where it does that purpose of, reminding the person either of you and the reason that you gave it to them, or, of the reason that it was planted in the first place. Again, whether a wedding or a birth or something like that. So you need something spectacular. You need something small. You need something adaptable. You need something that's going to be able to take almost any kind of soil. That's going to be able to take, anything from part shade to full sun, something that's going to be forgiving, of course, because, again, it needs to have some leeway there for people of varying skill and interest levels in gardening. So it's kind of a tall order, yeah?
It is a tall order. And, working in the garden center industry, Stacy, one thing that I dealt with often were memorial plants. And, what's a good memorial plant? Or like you mentioned, many times they want this memorial plant to bloom around the time of the event, possibly somebody's passing. And it's a big deal. And I was always very serious and took it to heart because it's important.
Yeah, and it's very, meaningful. So I am going to give you, for today's Plant on Trial, the ultimate all-purpose, easygoing gift plant, whether it's a housewarming, birth, death, wedding, promotion. I don't know why you're giving plant gifts, but here is the one that you can keep in your back pocket for any occasion. Invincible Wee White Hydrangea.
Wow.
Now, of course, hydrangeas are always great. They're easy to grow. They're very floriferous. But this particular hydrangea is a native smooth hydrangea, so hydrangea arborescens. So that's always a good thing as well. Just a nice little bonus to have. And it checks all of these boxes. Basically the easiest way to think about Invincible Wee White Hydrangea is that it is a dwarf version of the very famous and widely planted Annabelle hydrangea. So Annabelle is a classic. A lot of people know it. A lot of people grow it. Beautiful plant, but it gets to be about 5 to 6 feet tall and wide, and it flops. Anyone who's ever grown it will tell you one good summer thunderstorm in July, and that thing is on the ground, never to recover until the following year. And Invincible Wee White Hydrangea resolves both of those issues. So compared to that 5 feet tall and wide for Annabelle, it's going to be just 1 to 2.5 feet tall and wide. So
That's great.
It's almost like a perennial, really, that same kind of size. And it doesn't flop. It has very, very sturdy stems. So this is not one of those plants that's going to wind up on the ground with the flowers all in the soil and looking sad and kind of taking away from the joy of why you planted it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a smart choice, Stacy, because people love hydrangeas, and it being an Annabelle, you're taking away the pruning issue too, right?
Exactly. So that's the other good thing, is that no matter if your gift recipient prunes it or doesn't prune it, it's going to flower. So it's kind of got that foolproof built-in thing because, if they don't know what to do and they don't do anything, it's good. If they think they know what to do and they do something, you're still good to go. And of course, as with all of the Proven Winners Color Choice shrubs, it's going to come with a tag that has all of that information in it. But of course, sometimes people lose those. It's also on our website. And of course, you can always reach out to us and we'll always help. But it has that kind of foolproof factor. So even if they never read the so-called instruction manual, they're going to still be successful and not have to worry about, that disappointment, or that you don't have to worry that you have given your recipient more work, except for deer. Now, I do have to caution that this is one liability of this plant. I think that smooth hydrangeas and panicle hydrangeas, which are also a close second for the perfect gift plant, do both have the liability of being very much beloved by deer, especially the flowers. So very often they will come along, they'll just eat the flower bud. They'll mostly leave the rest of the plant alone in many cases. Not so much on smooth hydrangeas I've seen in my garden, but back when I attempted to grow them, I'm done with that. If, deer are not an issue, this is an excellent, excellent choice. It's going to have white flowers that are proportional to the plant. For us, usually in about early to mid-July. So really nice time for summer, and, everything is looking really great.
So a couple questions for you, Stacy. One question would be the deer issue, yes, but it's offset by the fact that generally smooth hydrangeas have a pretty wide hardiness zone,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, because no matter where pretty much your recipient is, they're going to be able to grow this. Invincible Wee White Hydrangea is hardy down to USDA Zone 3, so very, very cold tolerant, and heat tolerant through USDA Zone 8, so also very, very heat tolerant. So that's a good wide range, for the plant to thrive in. If they have off years where it does get really hot, it's still going to do great.
And another question for you. I'm just curious. Is it appropriate, if you're giving this as a gift, to add a soil amendment and some fertilizer? Is that tacky or not?
So I get where you're coming from, Rick. And I think that, a lot of people...
Don't kill this plant.
A lot of people will, try to round it out and give that total package. But we actually do not recommend amending the soil or really doing anything at all at planting time, especially for something like a smooth hydrangea. They really, truly are going to be best planted in the actual soil. And our tags do say that, but a lot of people just still think, that they don't have to. And as far as fertilizer goes, new plants don't, annuals aside, and vegetables, of course, don't need fertilizer. They have been fertilized to within an inch of their life by the grower before you get them. And so there's really no need for fertilizing, I think, for the entire first year.
That's good, because it's tough to wrap a bag of potting soil in fertilizer.
That is true. And so if your recipient asks, because they're going to say to you, hey, you're the gardener here, what should I do? Just say, just plant it in the ground, find a good spot, I can help you. And to really make a plant gift extra special, you can always volunteer to stay around and help for the planting, because
I like that.
Giving your own time is always a welcome gift. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to be opening up the garden mailbag, so please stay tuned. Greetings, gardening friends, and welcome back to the Gardening Simplified radio show, YouTube show, and podcast. Take your pick, although I always recommend the YouTube show because you get a lot of bonus content. Adriana puts a lot of time into the YouTube, and then you get to see pictures of the plant on trial and all the other cool stuff we do, and photos that our listeners are sending in with the mailbag, because sometimes that's very important to understanding the problem.
When you're doing detective work. And coming up in segment 4 today, more about garden gifts, an interview with Dr. Alan Armitage. And here's a gift for you. AlanArmitage.net is the website. You can see his wonderful books. I've read his books. You use promo code VEIST. That's my last name. So it's spelled VUYST. And he'll give you free shipping.
Oh, gotta love that.
There you go. So we'll talk to him about that in segment 4.
So, we are going to answer some gardening questions now. And if you have a gardening question, we would be glad to help you. You can reach us at gardeningsimplifiedonair.com. There is a contact form there. You can attach photos. You can describe your problem. And I also wanted to mention, as we are coming into the winter season and questions do kind of slow down because you're not out there thinking, what do I do about this or what's going on with this, is our plant panel videos. So I don't know if you've seen those on our YouTube channel.
You bet.
But, we always get a lot of questions from people asking, like, what should they plant? What should they do with this area? And those kind of questions are, frankly, just really hard to answer on a radio show because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of different things. So if we answered a lot of those plant recommendation questions, we wouldn't be able to get to any of the other gardening questions. So we have actually created a playlist called Plant Panel. And so myself, my colleagues, Natalie and Christina, we get together and we look at pictures that people have sent in. They talk to us about their challenges and their hopes and their dreams for the space. And then we make different suggestions, not just of Proven Winners Color Choice shrubs, but all sorts of different things. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been very well received. And if you would like to submit your garden for some plant recommendations, just visit provenwinnerscolorchoice.com and you can click on the contact us and there is a form right there to do it. So
who wouldn't want that gift? Make sure to tune in.
Free advice.
We love it.
I mean, free, very opinionated advice. I will give you this, but that's good.
I love it.
We always have perspective. So we definitely have opinions. So anyway, Rick, what do we got in the mailbag today?
Don writes to us, love your show. I'm in southern New Jersey, zone 7B. This is a Japanese red maple. Don sent us a picture. Maybe blood good. Please, can you tell me what causes this kind of damage 6 to 8 feet off the ground? And then he says, our deer are short. So he has damage on the tree, but it's 6 to 8 feet up the tree. And Don's saying the deer there in New Jersey are short.
Yes, well, deer can actually do damage higher than their height if you live in a snowy area, because the snow can definitely make them much taller than they would normally be, and I have seen that. But this is not deer damage. I don't have a definitive answer for you, Don, but I do have some thoughts. So when I was looking at this damage, I do believe that it is yellow-bellied sapsucker damage.
Interesting.
So yellow-bellied sapsucker are birds. They're a relative of a woodpecker, and they actually do look quite a bit like a downy woodpecker, much bigger, so similar. So when you look at one, you're like, whoa, that's way too big to be a downy woodpecker. And they do have a little bit of a flush of yellow on their bellies, but they're much more secretive. You don't usually see them as often as you see woodpeckers. And what the yellow-bellied sapsucker does is not suck sap, but they peck holes into the wood of smooth-barked trees. So magnolias, certain maples, pines can also be really susceptible to yellow-bellied sapsucker damage. So they make a series of holes, and then the sap flows out of those holes, and that attracts insects. And then they come along and pick off the insects out of this little sap trap that they have created. And so you will see this on trees all over. It's quite common, and it's just lines of very, very neatly arranged holes through the bark of the tree. Now, the reason that I think this is yellow-bellied sapsucker damage, what's actually happening in Don's photo is the bark is gone almost completely in these areas. So not all over the tree, but just in these sections. But when I look at it, when I look at the edges, I see what really looks like it was probably round sapsucker holes. So kind of like the margins of the damage look to me like it was very, very much likely to be yellow-bellied sapsucker. And that as that damage has recurred over and over again, and the sapsuckers have made increasing lines, that moisture and so forth has gotten under the bark. It's kind of killed off that section, and it's just fallen off completely. So you aren't seeing that kind of characteristic rhythmic lines.
That is great detective work. I am impressed. That's fabulous. And yes, I have seen that on smooth-barked beech trees before.
Yeah, beech trees as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's what I think. Do you have any thoughts?
But the only thing that I thought is, if it was not that, but I think you nailed it, would be sun-scaled. I mean, we have to bear in mind that especially maples or a variety of trees, if there's temperature fluctuations just under the bark, cold to hot, sometimes we'll get sun-scaled, sometimes we'll lose bark that way. But based on the pictures, no, I think you nailed it, Stacy. I'd go down that road, Don.
So in the case of yellow-bellied sapsuckers, there's really nothing that you can do. And normally it's important to realize that sapsucker damage, we call it damage, but I mean, of course, most trees have evolved to live with woodpeckers and sapsuckers and all of that. So it's not usually quite this dramatic, and trees can live with it just fine. Because of course, it's not in the sapsucker's best interest to go around killing trees, because then it's going to lose its entire food source anyway. But of course, certain things can happen through a different, confluence of circumstances where it does remove entire portions of bark like this. But again, there's really nothing that you can do. If the sapsucker wants to feed there, it will.
Yeah, it causes me to wonder, hanging up a suet feeder with the woodpecker cakes, if it would distract them or attract more of them. So, yeah, that's probably not a solution either.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how often they visit suet, because I think they are very insectivorous. I mean, of course, woodpeckers are as well. And, I was reading something not too long ago where someone says, oh, yeah, I tried putting out salt licks for the deer in the hopes that they wouldn't eat my plants. And I'm like, that will never happen. Deer aren't like, oh, how wonderful, she's feeding us. Guess we won't eat the hydrangeas. They're just going to be like, oh, great, more food at my favorite restaurant.
Quid pro quo.
Exactly. So nothing you can do, but maybe get a pair of binoculars and enjoy the behavior of the sapsucker, because it is quite interesting to watch.
Helen writes to us, we've been battling squash bugs for the last 2 years, and I'm thinking that they actually wintered over in the soil from last year because they were so prevalent in our garden area this past growing season. A gardening friend told me I should get a flamethrower, yikes, and scorch the soil to eliminate them. Hey, there's a garden gift idea, a flamethrower. Is there another solution? We also had Mexican bean beetles for the first time ever. Will they winter over to next year? I've been a gardener for 40 plus years, and this is my first experience with these pests.
Yikes. Yeah, those are two brutal pests for vegetable gardeners for sure. So I do want to address the squash bugs first. I would not recommend the flamethrower simply because, there are a lot of garden pests that will overwinter directly under their host plant. So a viburnum leaf beetle would be a great example. They're really going to be right around that plant, whereas the squash bugs are not necessarily. So you don't necessarily know that they are where you grew the squash last year.
I agree. That's why many times to deal with squash bugs, we use floating row covers.
Oh, that works.
To deal with them, laying their eggs when they're moving. Yes.
That's a good idea. Right. The other thing, so you can't really, so they are out there overwintering, waiting for your zucchini to start growing. So a couple of things that you can do would be to monitor your plants. And squash bug eggs are clustered, so they're very easy to see. They're also pretty bright red. So if you are at the time, I would recommend contacting your local cooperative extension. Find out the growing degree days or time frame when squash bugs begin to be active, and then just go ahead and start monitoring your plants. Turn the leaves over, and what you will see is in the V's where the veins come together, a little cluster of kind of ruby colored eggs. And then you can either cut that leaf off entirely, or you can take duct tape, roll it around your fingers, and just lift the eggs right off of the leaf. So, I'm afraid that probably is the best way. I think a floating row cover is also an effective way. The only thing about the floating row cover on things like zucchini is then pollinating insects are also not getting in there to pollinate it. You can also try staggering your crop. Especially if you are growing zucchini, it's got a pretty short life cycle. So maybe try sowing it, 2, 3, even 4 weeks later than you usually do, and see if that doesn't help to kind of miss their prime time. And that's also what I recommend about the Mexican bean beetles. Mexican bean beetles do start feeding quite early in the season. So if you are out there sowing bean seeds in May, they're like, oh yeah, I got the tenderest spring leaves. This is what I live for. Whereas if you make subsequent sowings of beans, say later into June, that will, again, sort of avoid their main window of feeding.
And those are great points, Stacy, because remember, when it comes to IPM, integrated pest management, Stacy, timing is everything. So you've got to learn who your enemy is.
Yes. And, we are going to be talking a lot about timing in a future show when we talk about what we learned this year, because I learned a lot about timing in the vegetable garden. And I am now a big proponent of trying different timings to evade all sorts of different pests. So we'll put some resources on the website, gardeningsimplifiedonair.com, for you, Helen, and anyone else who struggles with squash bugs and or Mexican bean beetles. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we have got a phone call with the one and only Dr. Ellen Armitage. So please stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Gardening Simplified show. Today, in branching news, well, I got to tell you, this is a treat for me because this gentleman has been a mentor to me and an inspiration. I have read his books front to back. His name is Dr. Alan Armitage. He's a professor emeritus of horticulture, University of Georgia, born and raised in Quebec and Ontario, and then later lived in East Lansing, Michigan, which is in close proximity to where we record here. And Stacy, if you look over our shoulders for our YouTube viewers, it's snowing pretty good out here. And Alan knows what that's like, but he now resides in Athens, Georgia. He's worked with gardeners, landscapers, growers, retailers, north and south. He travels the world. He has a passion for plants. He has what I call a great sense of humus. You should follow this gentleman on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube. He has an app, Armitage's Great Garden Plants, and you've got to visit his website and check out his books. It's alanarmitage.net. And now I understand on top of all of that, Stacy, we've got T-shirts too.
Oh, yes, I saw the T-shirts. There needs to be more garden fashion. So I applaud the T-shirts.
Well, I tell you what, Alan, you are into fashion, and I love it. Thanks for joining us on the Gardening Simplified show.
Hey, Rick. Hey, Stacy. I love listening to this stuff. Of course, it always makes you feel nice when people say good things about you, but you got to be sure that on this YouTube thing, or if you're posting some pictures, you got to be telling them that the model for the T-shirts was just the last one they could find. So I'm going to be maybe setting you guys up something so you can actually look a whole lot better in these T-shirts than that model is doing. But anyway, thank you. It's great. Yeah, I just of course love what you do and love what we do as gardeners and people who get their fingernails dirty. It's in your blood, and it's great fun.
Well, I have tremendous respect for you, Alan, and I'm serious. You were a mentor and an inspiration to me. I think what really got me going, Stacy, was I read his book, Herbaceous Perennial Plants, which now has a 4th edition. Read it cover to cover and wore that thing out. No, I did not use it as a doorstop, but it's big enough
Yes.
to use as a doorstop.
If you don't like the book, Rick, I've also recommended to people that if they don't like it that much, they can use it, for weight training. Just stick one of those in each hand. And but that book has been, that of course that's got real good legs. It's in the 4th edition, like you said, and each edition is about 10 years. So that tells you how long that thing has been out. And but it has almost a little cult following. It is a good book. I'm very proud of it, and glad that you wore yours out. So we'll have to get you another one.
Well, it has a cult following because Alan has a real sense of humus, and I love that. And it's amazing being in this industry, Alan. I just turned 65 a couple weeks ago, so I'm getting up there too, and. I was listening to you in an interview. I thought it was you were talking about Gen Zs, and I was thinking about the Gen Z generation, and it was mentioned that they are digital natives. All of this digital stuff is just second nature to them. But what's been fun to watch, Alan, is their love for plants. There's huge enthusiasm and love for plants.
Isn't it something? And again, you're 65. Gosh, you're an old man there, Rick, and you may catch me one of these days. But the fact is that I don't know what gens they are, but I was in the nursery and garden center watching these mostly young ladies with their mothers, I may add, who weren't hovering. They were just with them having a grand time. And they were actually in the houseplant section, which is where they love to go. And, I mean, they didn't want just a crummy, and I say crummy, you didn't want just a regular old pothos. They wanted a name variety. Yeah. They wanted something they could take home and cuddle and give it a name. Mm-hmm. So they were looking for good stuff, and it was really wonderful to see it. I don't know how long this is going to last, but this whole digital thing and everything is online. But it's interesting that, believe it or not, people still are reading a book or two. So thank goodness for that. But the digital thing is certainly second nature.
We mentioned during the first segment of today's show that I think books are still a great gift. And Stacy, I know you feel the same way.
Definitely.
You can personalize them. You can hold on to them. And by the way, at alanarmitage.net, if you use promo code VEIST, that's my last name. It's spelled VUYST. Alan, you're going to give free shipping too. Merry Christmas.
Well, Merry Christmas indeed, because, and again, I'm doing this for your listeners, Rick, because if they're silly enough to listen to you and me at the same time, they need a bonus. They need something. I can make a T-shirt that I survived points at Armitage. But anyway, so the free postage is getting to be such a terrible thing. Yeah. It's expensive. And so the free postage thing, I think twice about these days, but for your guys and for people who are listening, I'm happy to do it. And we talked about that huge darn book on perennials. But back the bargain, you get free postage in that thing, let me tell you.
No kidding. Well, whether you're Gen Z or into books or whatever it may be, Stacy, people love plants. People love plants. And that's the great thing about being in this industry. I was listening to Alan being interviewed. He had a great line because I was just chatting with Kevin Hurd about plant trials and how plants are put through trials. Same thing here at Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. And Alan said plant trials are Macy's on Thanksgiving. I thought that's a great line.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that a great line?
Well, and you certainly, just going to a plant trial, or if you can't get there, talk to somebody who's been, or getting some data from online trials, you can't help but learn something. And depending on what you're doing, if you're just my daughter, just wanting to make her garden look better, it's nice to know that if you go find a plant that has a little bit of background, that you're probably going to be successful with it. Because people, breeders or garden centers or whatever have actually, trialed these plants. And there's an awful lot of new plants out there, as you know, Rick, and not all of them are any better than what's out there 5 years ago. So, it's good to have these things trialed, to be sure.
Well, I think that it also says a lot about why social media has helped garden grow, because it starts to become this third-party endorsement. You don't have to take our word for it. You don't have to take down Dr. Armitage's word for it. Universities are saying so, and your friends are saying so, and all of that social proof really just kind of builds the confidence that people need to actually take the plunge that maybe kept them from gardening earlier before they could get this information.
Well, we probably need to talk about some of those things that helped gardeners become more successful, and a few things that are going on that are really making gardeners think twice. And here's my take, you guys, on what gardeners have that so few other people have. Why, and again, I don't want to sound crazy here because I don't mean to be, but gardeners have something that hardly anybody else has, and that is there is always something to look forward to. Always. If you put a seed in the ground, you're looking forward to its germinating. You put a bulb in the fall, you're looking forward to the spring. You put a shrub in now, you're looking forward to the flowers. There is nothing we do that does not give us joy because we're looking forward. And I want to tell you, you don't get old when you're looking forward. It's really, really cool. And it's not anything we do or did. It's just who we are. Yep. And I really, truly believe that.
That is really well said. Merry Christmas.
So I get every now and then, and I'm going to put that in my T-shirt somewhere too. But I do see that always. And I don't know, Rick or Stacey, you probably have maybe not been to any one of my silly talks, but I often will preface this by saying, I've met many, many tired gardeners. I've met many sore gardeners. I've met many broke gardeners. But who I have never met is an old gardener. Because you can't get old looking forward to the future. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. So, and again, we're healthier. We're certainly not wealthier. And I don't think we're any wiser. But we're healthier and we smile a lot.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You made my day with that. Stacey and I have been talking about climate change, and you're very familiar with Michigan. And I've been looking through the records this past year, Alan, and by the way, we're chatting with Dr. Alan Armitage. He's an author, a speaker, has done so much for the horticulture industry throughout the years, professor emeritus of horticulture at the University of Georgia. I've been looking at the data, and our garden seasons, our growing season, doing this thing that we're looking forward to, has certainly extended. If I go back to the 70s and 80s, I'm looking at growing seasons that were maybe 130 days where we live here in West Michigan. And last year, I think we got close to 180 days. It's just incredible.
It is incredible. And it, on the surface, that just sounds great. Oh boy, more we can garden. And in fact, it's nice. But as you know, many of the plants that we grow, particularly those that are perennial, i.e. herbaceous perennials, trees, shrubs, they benefit from cold, and they benefit from long periods of cold, and they benefit from snow cover. And sometimes we're not getting as much of that as we used to. You know for sure, Rick, that when you were growing up in Michigan, you were probably out there ice skating on the pond. Heck, the pond probably doesn't even freeze anymore.
Absolutely.
So things are certainly different. Yeah.
And they're experiencing that also in Europe. My dad yesterday turned 95 years old. He grew up in the Netherlands, and he would ice skate the canals, and now there's no ice on the canals.
And for us, I'm from Montreal. Heck, that's all we ever did. That's what we kept saying, was put on ice skates and go skating. And we used to freeze the backyard, put boards up. That's really not happening anymore. And for the point of view of the garden side, it is good in that we don't want that much winter. I get it, but it's a little bit tougher for plants, I think, with this changing climate.
Stacy, I'm still clinging, though, to the show that we did with Alan Armitage a few months ago, and make sure to look for it on podcast or on YouTube, where Alan just gave me encouragement. He said that it's easier to garden in the north than the south. Alan, because in the north, what was it you said? They're either doing great or they're dead, one or the other, right?
That's right. Yeah. In the south, they tend to linger, whereas in the north, they're either beautiful or they're dead. And but anyway, maybe you got a few lingerers as well. But no, it is actually easier to garden in the north. But most people don't believe you when I say that.
Alan, going to ask you for a few things, a Christmas present for our viewers and for our listeners. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to ask you is, aside from a book, you have so many wonderful books. And by the way, folks, Alan reminded us also that the book Field Guide to Specialty Cut Flowers is a big seller, and it's a testament to how people have really embraced cut flowers. But Alan, aside from a book, as a gardener, what's something you'd want to get this Christmas as a gift? You personally, what would you want?
I'm the kind of fellow that doesn't need anything, doesn't really want anything until I realize that I don't have something. So there's a couple of things like, give me a great pair of leather gloves. Mm-hmm. Now, I know it's boring. I mean, it's boring. I can tell you about the app and this other stuff, but give me a good pair of leather gloves because I'm not a macho guy. I'm happy to put a pair of gloves on when I'm digging or whatever I'm doing, and that's just a great gift. And the reason I'm thinking about that now is because mine are 5 years old and starting to get a little worn, mm-hmm. and so that's one for sure. But I tell you, if I had, not only if you're a gardener would you ask for this, okay? And I don't expect too many of your people to ask for this, but what I'd really like for Christmas is a big pile of compost with a big red ribbon on the top. Bring me a truck full, and I will be happy to spread it. But that is the key to any good gardening. But I'm not sure the neighbors would appreciate the truck coming in with a bow on top. But the compost is the key. But those are two gifts there you can work on.
Your neighbors would have to maintain their composture, but I agree, it's a great gift, and I do have your address, so be careful.
There you go. Well, I live in town, so to speak, in a very small garden, 60 by 100, and so I don't have room for a big compost pile that making one. I wish I could, and I would if I did have the room. So we get compost every year, and I put it on my garden. And if we have we have heavy clay soils here, and so I just throw it on top. Most everything is dormant. I just throw things on top, and it's amazing after 10 years or so, you got soil, you got dirt, and that really helps.
Well, time flies when we have the chance to talk to you, Alan. And so I've got to ask you this question again as a gift for our listeners and our viewers. Give me 2 plants that you think everyone should have in their garden. 2 plants that everyone should put in the ground in 2025, according to Alan Armitage. What would those 2 plants be, Alan?
Well, I'm going to give you... I'll give you one right off the top of my head is false indigo or baptisia. Baptisia is a perennial, grows very fine in Michigan. It grows just about anywhere. It gives you fabulous new growth when it comes out of the ground in the spring. Some of them actually have black buds. It gives you fine foliage, spectacular flowers, and then good fruit. And it is perennial. I mean, it'll be 20 years and you won't be touching the thing. So that's one plant that you just cannot go too wrong on. And a second plant, I guess I'm trying to stay away from just herbaceous stuff all the time, but I would probably certainly, and I hate to say hydrangeas because I'm not a fan at all of the mop head hydrangeas, your grandmother's hydrangeas. I'm not a fan at all. But the panicle hydrangeas, there are spectacular ones out there. And they're easy. They tolerate sun and shade. They come back every year. You can whack them to the ground if you wish, And those are two plants that just about anybody who's listening will be successful with.
His name is Alan Armitage. Now, for our listeners and our viewers, again, radio, podcast, and YouTube, going to give you the spelling. Alan is spelled Allan, and then Armitage, ARMITAGE.net. Check out the books. You'll be glad you did. And now the T-shirts. Use the promo code VEIST. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure Adriana will put the spelling of my name up there for you, VUYST. Happy holidays, Alan. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Rick, I'm going to throw one more thing at you before you get rid of me, and that is, if anybody wants to follow me, every month I do what's called My Favorites. It's a plant, it's a book, not a garden book, but a book, a streaming series, a place to go visit, and a great garden. So if they follow me, it's called Armitage's Favorites. Just have a great time. And Stacy, Adriana, Rick, thank you for having me, and I hope we can do this more often.
Would love to do it. Happy holidays, Alan, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Alan.
All the best to everybody. Take care now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I hope that you have lots of ideas and inspiration for the gardener in your life this holiday. We wanted to do it right now, so you'd still have time to order and shop for that gardener in your life. And so as you shop, we want to thank you for your time. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you,
Adriana. And of course, thank you, Dr. Armitage. Have a wonderful week ahead.